Hello YouTube, I hope you are well and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be reviewing James Cameron's behemoth modern classic, that is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The film is sometimes referred to as T2 or simply Terminator 2, and I watched both the special edition and the theatrical version. The special edition is slightly longer with some extra scenes, however I actually preferred the theatrical version, as in my opinion the deleted scenes didn't really add much to the film as a whole. I had heard so many positive things about this film, and although the first Terminator is immensely popular, the general consensus seemed to be that the sequel was superior to its predecessor. I was expecting a cinematic masterpiece and it did not disappoint. T2 was first shown on Independence Day in 1991, but it's actually set in 1995. The original Terminator film was based in 1984 and 7 years on. In terms of production, which began in 1990, the visual representation is much more sophisticated in Terminator 2. The fact that T2 was the most expensive film ever made contextually would be, I assume, the reason for this. Whilst the first Terminator 2 has a naive charm pictorially, T2 is much more slick and polished in its execution. The juxtaposition between the initial Terminator film and this sequel is profound, and perhaps this attributed it to receiving 4 Academy Awards. Furthermore, amongst its abundance of accolades, it's often featured in the top 10 best film lists. Terminator 2 begins in a similar way to the previous version, and indeed there are a few deliberate parallels between the two films. The title sequence shows LA in 2029, just like the original. It's a bit War of the Worlds, Orwellian, post-apocalyptic. It would certainly be described as dystopian. We see a futuristic nightmare where the machines have dominated the planet and obliterated most of humanity. We then see an adult John Connor, Sarah Connor's son, who is a guerrilla leader for the human resistance against Skynet. Kyle Reese's Begat is very much cast in the same mould. Skynet is the AI defense system, which will trigger Judgment Day in 1997, unless John Connor in 1995 can prohibit it. So, just to add another dimension to this, we are brought back to 1995, and Arnold's Terminator appears, a replica, identikit version of the pernicious cyborg in the first film. A very iconic scene follows in which the Terminator enters a bar on a mission to obtain clothes, weapons, mirroring the first film. It's a brilliant scene, and at this point the viewer is uncertain of the Terminator's ultimate modus operandi. There is tension and violence, but it ends with a humorous overtone. We are then introduced to another Terminator, sent back in time by Skynet, and this is a much more developed, refined version. He is played by Robert Patrick, and this was his breakout role. I think he looks a bit like a cross between James Dean and Link from Zelda, but that's probably just me. Patrick's Terminator is made from a liquid metal, which allows him to perform metamorphosis and take on the appearance of anything he comes into contact with, whether it's a floor or metal objects. Consequently, he is pretty indestructible, and this means that Arnold's otherwise resilient model looks a little clunky in comparison. John Connor, the child, is living with foster parents, as his mother has been institutionalised for blowing up a factory and being a fugitive. Up to that point, she had made it her sole intent to develop her son into a leader who would eventually be humanity's saviour, so this would be way over Dr. Phil's head. Remember him? Anyway. By some parallel, Arnold's Terminator, or T-800 as he is now known, is sent back from the future by John Connor, the adult, in order to save him from Patrick's Terminator, the T-1000 model. In a role reversal, the original Terminator is on humanity's side as opposed to that of Skynet. John realises that his mother's tenacious inculcation of him was actually for a purpose, and thus orders the T-800 to emancipate Sarah Connor, as he is scared that his nemesis, T-1000, will make an attempt on her life. Sarah Connor is understandably terrified on seeing Arnold's Terminator. She assumes that he has been programmed to murder her. He is not interested in that, but understandably, Sarah does not trust T-800 instantaneously. So, T-800 John and Sarah then proceed to try and prevent Judgment Day's nuclear apocalypse. Arnold diverges Skynet's plans and history, whilst Sarah learns that it has an engineer, Miles Dyson, and he was responsible for developing the software which will be the ultimate platform for Skynet. Sarah then takes it upon herself to try and destroy him. She travels to Mexico, where she retrieves weapons from a friend's underground bunker, and this is very much in the survivalist style. The compound is bleak in appearance, and I really think it reinforces the opening scene's post-apocalyptic environment. We see Sarah driving off, separating herself from her son and T-800, which maybe means that she herself becomes a Terminator. The mono-mindedness with one intention allows herself to emulate the Terminator's role. Sarah is followed by Arnold's Terminator and her son. As they are worried about her intentions, she is not in a rational state of mind, and they track her to Miles Dyson's house. She shoots at Dyson, but cannot bring herself to murder him, which is the result of a deus ex machina. It is really quite a touching scene, actually. She discovers that he is a father and that killing him in front of his family would be a monstrous thing to do. T-800 and John manage to intervene and explain, using Arnold's cyborg as an example of what impact Dyson's invention would have on the world. He is horrified by this and vows to demolish his work and prevent Skynet from ever existing. They travel to Dyson's lab, infiltrate it and destroy the Terminator's original arm, which was found after Sarah quashed it in the first film. They also ignite the CPU. Sadly, Dyson is fatally shot when the police arrive, although he manages to rig a kill switch which detonates the building upon his death, demolishing the laboratory. Whilst T-800, Sarah and John escape, T-1000 is in hot pursuit of them. And the last scenes of the film involve visceral combat between both Terminators and John and Sarah. There is a scene where liquid nitrogen manages to cover T-1000, causing him to crack. I actually found out after watching this that the sparkly effect was created using Christmas decorations. A very creative and economic touch for such a high-budget film. As usual, I shall not reveal the ending, but it was very emotional. I personally prefer the initial Terminator film, which is very controversial, I know, but I really did like T2. It's an evocative, thought-provoking piece of cinema, and I do recommend it. You could watch this as a standalone film, but in order to get the most out of this, you should watch the original one first to truly appreciate this. I must say, kudos to Linda Hamilton for all her dedicated training, as she only had 1% of body fat after her rigorous military regime to prepare for T2. I also think that her most empathetic line in the film, "If a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too," is very apt. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Any comments, feedback, or even any film review suggestions are always welcome too. Thanks for watching and bye for now.